You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below. Be sure, smash that like button. Get a good one. LSU wrapped up fall camp Saturday with their scrimmage in Tiger Stadium, which means they are now on to preparation for UCLA, but there are still position battles to be determined. To discuss, Brody Miller from The Athletic joins us now. Brody, thanks, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Before we get into specific positions, let me just ask you for an overarching thought on this team as best you can tell 2 weeks through camp. Where are they? About where you thought they'd be, not as far along, or maybe further along than you thought?
Yeah, I think my honest answer is generally about where I thought they'd be. I think the receivers are coming along, so I think that's something that is promising with the quarterback situation and whatnot, but I still feel like so much of it's going to come down to what that O-line really looks like against another front seven. And then on the other end, I had kind of unexpectedly high thoughts going into the defense going into this fall. And so far, I feel pretty confident there. We're going to get into some of the competition, still some questions, but I still think this defense should be one of the better units in the SEC. So I'm surprisingly saying I think it's about where I thought it would be.
Just to talk about the defensive side, it's just amazing how far of a cry from a year ago, which just goes to show how much of an outlier that was. Well, let's actually start on the offensive side, because for me, I think the biggest question is at running back. And after the scrimmage on Saturday, Ed Ogeron said Ty Davis-Price and John Emery haven't been as consistent as they would have liked. So as best you can tell, where does that leave LSU at running back 2 weeks from the opener?
I still think at the end of the day, if you just take, let's just say hypothetically they're both available, I still think the main two will be Davis-Price and John Emery. I think I had one person tell me, Davis-Price might get the bulk of just the main carries, but early in the year and all that kind of stuff. But their vibe has always been that John Emery, if healthy, because of his versatility, thinks he's actually really growing as a receiver, which as well as I did not have 2 years ago. They really do think he's going to have that big breakout year. But of course, what you're getting at, and I agree with, is neither of those guys have had any durability dependence through these 2-3 years, and this fall it's been almost every other week one of them's banged up in some way. So you do have to be worried. The one positive, and it's never ideal, is just how pretty fantastic both these two freshmen have looked, Armani Goodwin and Corey Kiner. Goodwin, obviously, that speedy, shifty guy, and Kiner more of that 215-pound bulky guy. But yeah, you're not going to be psyched if you don't have your main two running backs out there on Saturday or something like that. But I guess and I'm often naive on these things, but I at least don't think it's like a panic button hit for me just because of how good those freshmen have looked. But we'll see.
Okay. So you're buying that the freshmen could actually play a pretty key role on this team offensively?
I think what I've always been told is it's still the two juniors have the leg up. The freshmen are not really not knocking either of them off. I guess I'm just saying it's at least a bonus, kind of like the Nussmeier thing, where it's LSU's in trouble if Max Johnson goes down, but I do think Garrett Nussmeier is talented enough to surprise some people. I guess that's where I'm at with those freshmen. I don't necessarily think they're knocking those juniors off or anything.
Let's stay on the offensive side and move out to receiver, where the given, of course, is Kayshon Boutte, and then it seems as though you've got this incumbent in Jare Jenkins, who we haven't heard a ton about, but then here come the freshmen. And Brian Thomas was the guy early. We're hearing a lot about Malik Neighbors now. I mean, Brody, how many guys and in what order do you realistically expect them to be involved, to the tune of double-digit receptions during the course of the season, guys that could actually have an impact?
Yeah, it's the one spot where I just keep trying to get a clearer picture from people, and it's been it's just been really hard. I think I tend to get this vibe that it's going to be, let's say, it's going to be one of the veterans in one spot, maybe like a Jare Jenkins, and one of the freshmen in the other. That's just the kind of vibe I get. But again, I'm not predicting that. I really don't feel confident about that. But I do think Brian Thomas or Malik Neighbors will be a starter. It's too often now. It's too consistent now. The buzz is too this guy's a star, not just this guy looks good. So I tend to just lean toward Jare Jenkins and Brian Thomas get that spot, but it's just so open because I do think it's tight. I do think Trey Palmer, even though like we've been hearing it for 3 years, is right there. I do think there's like a trust in a Coy Moore type, for example, or a John Shea Kirkland type, and you can't even rule out a Deion Smith. So I do kind of think there will be. I'm gonna say six, at least six, but probably seven guys really do see the field of receiver. Like they really do like that depth in a legitimate way. While running back, we always talk about it's more of like a deep, but we don't know. I think they're going to play a lot of them, but who the starter is, I'm still struggling as much as the next guy. But I think one of those freshmen starts.
What is it about Malik Neighbors that is getting so many people's attention?
I don't know. I think it's one. I don't have an amazing answer about like a specific thing necessarily. He's just kind of grabbing a lot of tough balls, so maybe that's it. It's funny though. I like to give credit where it's due. I know Billy Embody about a week before, obviously on the show a good amount, but a week before camp started, I was talking to him about, and he's like, man, don't leave out Neighbors. And he's like, I think Neighbors is going to be as good as any of these guys, and he's proven me wrong. He nailed that one. But I don't know exactly what his thing is, and that's been the toughest part. I'll be honest with you and transparent with you about sometimes doing this in a pandemic time. It's hard to get some of those specifics, but I just know he grabbed a lot of balls in Saturday's scrimmage, a lot of tough jump 50-50 ones.
He's on Twitter at Brody A. Miller, theathletic.com. Make sure you read his stuff there. One more on offense. We sort of neglect the tight end spot, but that was such a key part of the 2019 offense with Thad Moss. Are they good there with Cole Taylor and I would assume Jack Besh there is the number two?
Yeah, it's good stuff to say, but I think it's stable. More stable than maybe it was last year. More stable than I personally thought it was. 2 months ago. Yeah. I think Cole Taylor is guy number one, and I think he's a guy who's not quite talked about enough. He's put on some real weight. He's just shy of 250 now, and that he's filling out that 6'7" frame. And I remember DJ Mangus was saying this spring, he's like, hey, like he has the mentality to be a real blocker. Like he's not afraid of it. He needs to fill up the frame. So I think that's a really big thing for him. So he's a good blocker, and I think he's always been a good receiver. So I still think he's a little underrated as much as I've been riding the Besh hype train as much as the next guy. So yeah, I think Besh is going to be a guy who it's almost hard to just call him just the tight end because I think he's just going to be moving around a lot and being a hybrid. But he practices with the tight end. So yeah, I think they're stable there. And this one I always throw with a grain of salt, but Ed Orgeron just keeps saying again and again, do not forget Jack Mashburn. Like that guy is good enough to see the field. So I want to at least give him credit where it's due. But yeah, I think they're stable there. I just don't know what the upside is yet.
I want to flip over to the other side of the ball. Let's start at linebacker, then go to safety. What is the deal with Mike Jones? And maybe a better question is, do you really believe Jared Small is going to be a week one starter against UCLA?
I don't think Jared Small will be a week one starter unless you go with the classic Orgeron thing of, four guys are starters in two spots. But I think there's four guys right now that are they're going to see the field. They are going to rotate. So maybe the starter thing is just semantics where, I think Damone Clark is pretty clearly, in my opinion, one of those guys right now. And I think Micah Baskerville and Bug Strong are probably pretty close for whoever's going to take that second spot. I think it's pretty tight there. And I think the last person I asked said they think it's Strong, but wouldn't be shocked at all if it's Baskerville. But then Jared Small is right there. Like I will be surprised if he does not see a solid, just chunk of snaps. I think he's going to play. The thing with Mike Jones is so tough is I think he's going to see the field because of his coverage. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like a third down, kind of option there as a coverage guy. I don't know, but he's struggling with and Orgeron had that great quote, of course, where he said, hey, he's been used to playing nickel all this time, and all of a sudden you're going up on the line against 350-pound Anthony Bradford. It's just an adjustment. But, yeah, I just think he's struggling with that part of it, of just getting used to the real physicality and all that. I mean, he had to gain a ton of weight just to get ready for this. And I don't think he's like I don't think you should call him like a bust or anything, because I think he's going to see the field. He's going to have value, and I bet he comes around at some point in the season. I don't think he's bad. I just think that transition's a little harder than I think a lot of people would guess.
It feels a lot. I've said this here on the show. I don't know if you agree. I'll get your take. It feels like what happened last year with Jabril Cox. He came to LSU with a very similar sight in mind, and it just didn't work out with him playing inside. But when he played outside, we saw him dynamic in intercepting passes, and that's ultimately what he's going to do really well, I think, in Dallas. But it almost sounds like Mike Jones is trying to be something that maybe he's not.
The comp is totally there. I think obviously similar skill sets, obviously similar kind of pedigrees to some extent. But I think the slight difference is, I mean, Cox, even though like inside wasn't his strength, that was still clearly the most trusted linebacker at times and stuff like that, where I think Jones is not quite even in that tier yet. But I think it's clearly a parallel for sure.
All right, what about at safety? If they had to start the season today, who are the two starters back there?
I think right this second, I think the starters are Jay Ward and Major Burns. You know, I think Major Burns, he's a name who, like, they keep saying he's the starter, and people keep confirming they think he's probably the guy right now, but no one's ever like told me much about him other than I've heard he's vocal, got good movement skills, dependable, that kind of stuff. And I think the interesting thing there would be if you start those two, it's probably two more coverage safeties, which, you know, probably a plus after last year. But I've heard Jordan Tolles is in the mix for sure, and he's a guy who give you a far bigger, stronger, you know, run-stopping safety to mix in there. So maybe that's a little bit. And then you can't rule out, you know, Derek Davis as well, too. But I think right now it's Burns and Ward.
Are they – all right, safety was bad last year. Like, objectively, they were just very bad. Bad. So you've got the two guys you just mentioned who are new at that position this year, and one of them is new to the team. And then after that, you've got Todd Harrison. You mentioned Jordan Tolles, and you bring in Sage Ryan. Like, are they better? Like, are they – not just with the two starters, but deep, and do they trust the position right now?
Yeah, I think the way I always put it's honestly kind of like my theme for this season in a lot of ways is like, I don't know if that room has the upside that, you know, some others might that you want there, but I do think, you know, I think we're on the same, like, it's more stable. It's more, you can trust it a little more. I know, you know, they know you can trust Jay Ward and especially, you know, Major Burns. Major Burns doesn't have some of the physical skills of like some other guys who have been around, but they know they can trust him and things like that. So I think so much of the season, so much of like my broken record thing is if you can just remove the incompetency on some of that stuff at the back end, that fixes, I don't know, I don't want to get crazy here, but like 8 points a game if you really look at some of the mistakes last year. So I think that's such a focus at times, and I do think they at least are accomplishing that.
That might even be conservative, I guess, at 8 points a game. I mean, Brody, they allowed a guy named Costello from Mississippi State to set an SEC single game record at 623 passing yards. Like, 8 points a game might actually be a little conservative. It
got to a point those last few weeks where we were doing like defending Bo Pelini stories because they were going from like 3 coverage busts a game to 2, and we're like, look at them, they're improving.
So bad. Well, it just can't be worse. We'll start to get a look at it a couple weeks from now. All right, Brody, thanks for the time, man. We appreciate you.
Always the best, man. Take care.
All right, he's on Twitter at Brody A. Miller, and you can read his stuff at theathletic.com. Get some great LSU coverage there. Brody does a really good job, man. Appreciate him for spending some time with us. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.